name is, again, Bob Ruybal. Um, my parents were Phil and Lucy Ruybal. They were born in the San Luis Valley of southern Colorado, a little town. My dad was born in a little crossroads called Magote, and my mother was born in Las Alces. Uh, I'm a Hispanic background. My dad and mom were both born in at home in little adobe houses by their mothers, and by the mothers, of course, by their grandmothers. They helped give birth. So very humble beginnings. Um, I was born in Denver, Colorado, um, October 12th, 1946. Um, went to school. We lived in southwest Denver, that's where I was essentially raised. Went to College View grade school. Then I went to Sheridan High School for 2 years, and then our little area was annexed into Denver, and I then spent my last 2 years at Abraham Lincoln High School. And then for college, I went to University of Colorado in Boulder.
Okay. Did you have any siblings?
I still have siblings, yes. So I'm the eldest of 7 boys.
Wow.
I have 6 younger brothers. My parents wanted a daughter and kept on trying, and finally adopted my sister Alice. They also adopted another brother, Steve. So there's 9 of us total. And then my parents, my mom especially, loved raising children. So the Catholic Charities at one point said, "Well, Lucy, you've got a house full of boys. Could you just bring a foster boy in and help us?" So she did that. And over the years, my parents brought in 32 foster children. So we always had bunk beds stacked in the room because there were so many of us. And there was always one or two extra boys, foster children. They started actually that when I left for college at the age of 17. They brought in, 2 years prior to that, they brought Steve in, fell in love with him, and adopted him. And then after that, then when I actually moved out at 17, they started bringing in foster children, foster boys. So 32 total.
Wow.
So always had a house full of children around. That's went to the University of Colorado. Was in When I was 14 years old. My neighbor got actually 15, got me a job as a caddy in a grocery store. So he'd take me to work with him, and I'd be out there bringing in the carts in the grocery store. And when I turned 16 and could drive myself, then I got a job as a checker in the grocery store. And so after I get out of high school, I'd go work every night. So I'd work 5 nights during the week, and then weekends, Saturday and Sunday, and get half of my paycheck I kept for myself. The other half I gave to my parents and help the family out. And that's just how it was. And I got my younger brother when he turned 16, got him a job as a checker, and I think 4 or 5 of us became checkers because that was a way that we could go to school and still work after school and bring some money into the house, into the family.
What were you going to college for?
Um, Good question, Matthew. I was going to be, I received a scholarship and I was going to be an engineer. So my first year was in engineering school, but I learned it was just a little too hard for me. So I changed over to English Lit. So I was going to be a teacher. I said, okay, I want to be a teacher and teach. So English literature became my major. Um, I worked my freshman year. I was the only year I didn't work. I had a scholarship, so had saved enough. I could just enjoy school and full time. But after that, I had to work. So my sophomore, junior, senior years, I had to work. So I'd go to school and then I'd go to work. And so it was a grind.
Yeah.
The classes got harder and harder, and In my senior year, I'd gone halfway through, and then January, I didn't go back. I just burned out. It was, it was just January 1968. I just said, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't burn both candles. I was just, pulling all-nighters to get my grades up, and then still working full time to have an income to support myself. So I dropped out of college. I was supposed to register on for class, I think, on January 6th. Exactly 30 days later, I received a letter. Two letters, by the way, changed my life. The first one, I'm going to tell you about right now, came from the President of the United States. Greetings from the President of the United States. I was drafted. I had 30 days in which to report. So um, February, I think I had to report. I got the dates are a little unclear, but middle of February, I got the middle of January, I got the letter. No, middle of January, I didn't go back to school. Got the letter 30 days, the draft notice 30 days later in February, and was given 30 days to report to the induction center in Denver, March 14th. Complicating things just a little, my grandfather, my mom's dad, passed away March 1st. So he died in March, 1st of March. I was part of the funeral, was aboard the casket. We buried him. And then almost 2 weeks later, I was drafted into the Army. So it was horrible for my mother. She had a real rough time during that month of March. But I was drafted, got my first airplane ride, and went from Denver. They flew me in a plane to Fort Bliss, Texas, for basic training. Fort Bliss was I think I weighed all of 120 pounds, just a scrawny little. I was always skinny, and they got us to boot camp, shaved my head, the drill. But I'll never forget Drill Sergeant Blue. He was just this magnificent man that he was black and just intimidated the heck out of us. But he taught us how to soldier. It was just, I don't know how to describe it. Authoritarian, but he wasn't brutal. He didn't degrade us at all. He just whipped us into shape. Um, I became a squad leader and then a platoon leader during that 8 weeks. I learned how to shoot a rifle, how to shoot the M16. I learned how to fire the machine gun, how to do a grenade launcher, everything. I still remember having to get through basic training. We had two things. We had to go on these overnight maneuvers. We'd go out in the desert of Texas, and we'd do these 20-mile forced marches at night. It was just amazing what we could do when you get in shape, carrying a backpack and all that. But I still remember being so exhausted, but crawling into it, making the tent, and crawling in, having a guy next to me that I had no idea who he was. I learned so much in basic training. I, I had never been around blacks. I'd never been around Italians, Native American. There was just all this culture and surfers, people from all over the United States. That all of a sudden we're in a platoon together, and we're having to get along, and we're having to depend on each other. I'm having to lead them. Had a I had a big black man that just intimidated the heck out of me, and he'd just stare me down and dare me to get him to do anything. But I was the platoon leader, so I made him my squad leader. I said, "All right, I'm not going to fight you. You're going to be part of my team." And he just blossomed. And I'd ask him to call cadence, and he had this booming voice, and I'd say, "All right, All right, Private, let's lead us, and I forget what I'd say. Let's start count off cadence, and he'd do it. And just amazing how I had to go through personal growth and all the others that went through. And I still remember when we had to go through the live ammo and crawl under at night, we did the maneuvers to crawl under the barbed wire, and there's live rounds going over our head as we low crawl through that thing, and you see the tracer bullets, and they keep telling us, don't panic, you'll get killed if you raise your head up above 18 inches, because we just these tracers are going over our heads. And but we got through basic. I got through basic at Fort Bliss. Got a nice letter of commendation. Sergeant Blue, as I said, Drill Sergeant Blue, just the best guy. But still to this day, remember him. I honor him. Um, he served 2 tours in Vietnam. And just was an amazing guy. Sorry, didn't mean to even do this, but anyhow, after that, then I went to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, um, for advanced infantry training. And so I have to backtrack a little too. So I was draftee, as you know, is 2 years of service. When I went to the draft board, they said, by the way, if you want to enlist for 1 more year, you get to pick your MOS, your military occupational specialty. I said, what does that mean? Well, it means you don't have to be 11 Bravo. You don't have to carry a rifle. You can be whatever you want. They showed me this whole thing. And I said, administration. That's what I want. So I want to be 71 Alpha, 71 Bravo, clerk typist. So I enlisted for the extra year to learn how to be a clerk typist. Didn't know how to type. When I went to an AIT, in addition to learning how to handle other infantry equipment, we went through clerk typist school. So they taught me how to type. And again, I was also the platoon leader while we were at Fort Huachuca. I still remember uh, big black guy, and I can't remember his last name. I don't know if I can't remember Washington or I forget what it was, but I still remember he came in one night. They were drunk. They'd been out in the bar drinking, and he comes over to me. It was an honor. He just said, he called me Hawkman. I don't know why, but Hawkman, you're okay. And it was just at that point I said, all right, this I finally can. It was good. It was a good thing. I said, this guy that scared the heck out of me when I first encountered him, and it was just obstinate as can be. Here we are, friends now, finally. Hawkman, you're okay. I said, he woke me up out of a sound sleep, give me a big hug, and I still remember that. It's just one of the moments that I remember. We're in Fort Huachuca. We'd be out on maneuvers again, and they'd always warn us, be careful when we have these thunder clouds come rolling through. We get these afternoon thunder clouds. We'd be in the gullies out there and maneuvering, and it'd get rain, and then the rain would come down the valley, and all of a sudden from an empty gully, you'd have 12, 15 feet of water rolling down and just wipe out everything that was in the valley there. So that's one of the memories I have from Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Those two memories. I learned how to be a clerk typist. Got a commendation again from there, and they sent me to Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indiana to leadership prep school. Spent another 8 weeks in Fort Benjamin Harrison, learning again more personal management skills, learning how to lead the basics of leadership. Um, it was a great class, and the Army knows how to mold men and to do whatever. I mean, they teach so many people how to be truck drivers, cooks, any kind of specialty. They taught me how to be a personnel management specialist, leader. Um, so I spent 8 weeks there. Went with one guy that went from AIT. Tyrone C. Willis. He was another. He was my other platoon leader, another black man, and we went to leadership school together in Fort Benjamin Harrison. That actually happened to be his home. Got to meet his parents on a weekend, and they were just really thrilled that their son was close to them for a minute. And then from there, we all went to then. I was assigned to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I didn't know it, but it's the home of the 101st Airborne. And so I spent the last 6 months of my first year in the service in Fort Campbell. From Fort Campbell, we went through more training. It was a little bit lighter duty. Weekends, we get 3-day weekend passes. I remember one weekend, uh, I'd driven back to Denver and got my car. I had a little VW, and that I drove out to Fort Campbell. Um, Within that car, we went and explored all the area around. We went to, we went to Nashville, Kentucky. We went to Nashville, Tennessee. We went to South Philly, where one of my other friends, Larry Sama, lived there. We took a 3-day pass to South Philly. I have no idea what South Philly was like. Got to learn all about Italian culture and the boardwalk. Took another weekend with Paul Kuss. He lived up in Ohio, and I learned about the beautiful rolling hills and horse country up in Ohio. Um, just had a great time. Um, exactly 1 year, no, yeah, one year. It would have been 1 year, close to 1 year that I'd been in the service. Then I received my orders to go to Vietnam. So I had 1 week leave. I drove home. Um, there were several of us that we all received orders to go to Vietnam from Fort Campbell at the same time, but we all split up. No, but none of the people that I was with, all that group, we went when we got to Vietnam. We were just splintered everywhere. None of us were in the same division or same group. But anyhow, I drove home, told my parents I'm going to Vietnam. They they loaded me up in a car, in their car and Dad's car. We drove from Denver to Oakland, California, which is where I was supposed to report. I had an aunt in San Jose that my parents stayed with. It was my mother's uh, sister, and we stayed with them, and Jerry and Uncle Jim. And then I reported into Oakland and flew from Oakland to Vietnam. I remember we landed in Japan for a layover, just for a brief layover, and then right into Saigon, into Long Binh. We landed. The whole jet was filled with. It wasn't. It was. There were no commercial passengers on it. It was all U.S. Army going to, and maybe other services, but it was 100% going to Vietnam. We landed in Long Binh. I still remember Long Binh's this huge air base, monster air base. I remember getting out of that jet and just smelling the napalm. You could smell the jet fuel. You could hear the the choppers going everywhere. It's just all this buzz of activity. I mean, Hueys, Bell helicopters, jets flying around. It's just trucks, convoy. It's just massive, massive noise all around. Um, I'll never forget that the smell and the noise when I walked off that jet. The worst part, when I landed in Vietnam, you go into a holding company until you get your orders to where you're going to go. 3 days of holding company, and you're waiting for your orders to come so you're permanent in your next assignment. While you're there, you have no. I mean, I was the platoon leader before. I had all these relationships. Now I had nothing. I'm just one of 300 people in a big barracks full of people, and I'm living out of my duffel bag. And two things happened. Number one, there's while you're there, you're on that 3-day hold. You perform shit duty. I don't know if you know what that is, but what that is. So in Vietnam, there's no plumbing. It's all outhouses. So they take these 50-gallon drums, cut them in half, and that's what they put underneath each outhouse. So we're the FNGs. FNGs, you know what that is? Fucking new guy. We're the FNGs. We have to perform shit duty. That's our duty for the 3 days you're in that holding company. You get out, you go out with a team of two guys. I mean, there's probably 50 of us doing it, but we go to all the outhouses. We're with the Jeep. We have a trailer. Pull the full barrels full of shit. Put them onto the trailer. Put an empty one in, and you just cycle all around. You do that in the morning. You do that in the evening. You take the full ones over to this other area and pour some either kerosene or gasoline on it, and throw a match to it, and you burn it. And that was shit duty, and it was horrible. But that was my welcome to Vietnam, performing shit duty for 3 days. So the second day I was there, someone in that holding company took a pair of, I padlocked my duffel bag. Someone took some bolt cutters, cut it open, my bag, and took my Nikon camera that I had all my all my pictures from my family and all that stuff in there, and told the local CO or sergeant. He said, nobody does that, Pop. Uh, how am I going to find who did this? Anyhow, it was a cover up. I was I, I was pissed. He took First of all, I'm having to perform shit duty. No big deal. We're all doing it. I'm not above that. But don't steal. Don't take my camera. I'm here trying to here to serve. He's just stole my camera. Somebody did. That was my welcome to Vietnam. Then within 3 days, I was assigned to the headquarters unit, 101st Airborne. Long Binh is the air base, this major with 3 or 4 runways, big, huge tarmac. It's where the choppers and all kinds of hangars. Right next to it is called Bien Hoa. That's where the 101st Airborne headquarters was, just 100 yards outside the perimeter fence. I'm there with come over to the group. They're glad to see me. They had received orders I was coming, and Warrant Officer Bennett, I still remember his name, uh, welcomed me and made sure I was taken care of. Got assigned to my hooch. You get in Vietnam, you're in a hooch with 10 to 12 people. Each hooch, they're all lined up. You have those become your soulmates, your roommates and soulmates. You learn everything about because you're living with those people 24/7, and you're in the war zone with them. And they're the ones that taught me about incoming mortar and what you do. I mean, because we're next to the air base, the North Vietnamese every night and day would try to send mortars onto the runway to break it up to stop the jets from being able to take off. And there's always three because there were always the MVA were two people, two guys. One would carry the launcher and one would carry one round. These are little. They probably weighed these guys. MVA were so small. They were small people. Probably weighed 100 pounds. That's each one of these, the mortar launcher and the mortar itself probably weighed 100 pounds each. So then they'd have another guy. He'd carry 2 more rounds. So there was always 3 rounds. At night, we would what they would do. They would low crawl to get as close to the perimeter as they could, and they're just dead reckoning. Is how there's no sights on those things. They just would aim it at the runway. And so our camp is here, the runway's here, the perimeter's here. So we call it walking the mortars. The first mortar that they fire, they see where it hits, and then they adjust it to try to get closer to the air base. So there's always three rounds going off. And I learned, no matter how tired you were, no matter how, if you had been drinking beer, if you had been smoking, a little, yeah, I was introduced to marijuana in Vietnam. If you were smoking and joking, no matter whatever happened, no matter where you were, when that first round hit the ground, you yelled incoming, and you pancaked on the ground. That was a method of survival, because I can't tell you the number of times that the rounds would come in our camp, and then it's just 360 degrees, the shrapnel would just go everywhere. And you get peppered, and we had to rebuild our sandbags, rebuild the walls on our hooches, rebuild the roofs, our our lockers, our foot locker things, the stand-up cabinets where we had our clothes would just get peppered. I'd have to get new clothes. But that's how we lived in Vietnam, with the incoming mortar every night in our headquarters camp. Um, the so I'll tell you three stories about incoming mortars in Vietnam. Are we doing okay? By the way, Matthew, I'm trying to remember some of this, but we had I arrived in March, and that was the beginning of this of 1969. March of '68 was the largest Tet Offensive. The second largest was March of 1969. So this huge Tet Offensive. So we were getting mortared and rocketed continuously. MBA were just streaming down on the 101st and through that whole area. Um, we had a new sergeant major that came in. I guess I'd been in country about 2 months, and a new sergeant major came in, and he was old school and says, "All right, we're going." Before we would get up, go to chow, take a shower, go to chow, and then as long as we were in the admin hooch by 7 o'clock in the morning, we'd do our work. We'd work a 12-hour shift, 7 to 7, and then get off. Then the night crew would come in, and so my group was in charge of. I'm digressing a little bit, but my group was in charge of overseas reassignment. So all the people after they'd served in Vietnam for 1 year, you serve in Vietnam for 365 days exactly. Then you get reassigned if you back to your next air base. If you still had time left. If you were a draftee, we sent you back to the nearest base near your hometown, so you could get released. But that was what I typed up, was all those orders, was the overseas reassignment. We also typed up missing in action orders, killed in action orders, letters to the parents, and MIA and uh, WIA, wounded in action. The WIAs were where we had the most. We were just constantly typing those letters, and you had to have, if a parent or somebody did an inquiry, you had to, after the initial notice, we had to keep a file on every soldier in 101st Airborne, so we didn't send the same letter. It had to always be a fresh letter if they wanted an update. Um, we did it all manually. We just typed them, kept the file system, and had to have a file copy in our own local file, and then we had to send the rest, the original and some of the copies off to the Department of Defense. They sent them to the parents and family. Anyhow, I digress. we we had, I was going to tell you about Reveille. So we had this new sergeant major that came in. And before we would just go direct to the hooch and do our work, he said, "Now we're going to have Reveille. We're going to have formation. You guys are going to get in formation, and I'm going to tell you what your duty for the day is or whatever." Anyhow, we started having to have these Reveilles at 7 o'clock, and I think we did it for about 2 weeks, and then one morning we were just calling in Reveille, incoming mortars started coming in. One came probably like from me to maybe the other side of this bookcase. And it just nice. You could hear the shrapnel going off. I pancake on the ground. I probably got 7 guys on top of me. I didn't care. As I said, more guys on top of me, the safer I am. And the next round comes over, and the other side, and it went right next to the hooch where some of the guys had been showering still in their bunks, and we lost. I think we had 7, 8, 9 guys got wounded to action that morning, and then the next one got closer to the base. But anyhow, that was the end of morning reveille. That sergeant major learned this is a war zone. The last thing you want to do is gather your troops at 7 o'clock in the morning as a target for the MVA to hit you. So um, that's one story about incoming mortars. Uh, Another story, as I said, you learn you learn as soon as that first mortar hits, you just pancake. No matter where you're at, what you're doing, you just pancake on the ground. And um, one time it was probably about 2 in the morning, and we had incoming in our hooch, and one of the first mortar landed just outside our hooch. We got shrapnel going through the roof and going through the walls, and just uh, we yelled incoming, and we roll on the floor, and the shrapnel's going through, and I hear Smitty. Smitty's on the end of the hooch, and it's pitch black, and Smitty's down there. I'm just screaming away. Smitty, you okay? Smitty, what's going on? What's going on, Smitty? And Smitty's just screaming away. And then the next mortar comes in on the other side, and you hear more shrapnel going. Smitty's still screaming away. Finally, the third one hits. Smitty, do we need to call medic? What's going on? Finally, after the third one lands, we all low crawl over to Smitty's bunk. He's laying on the floor, just curled up. Poor guy. Smitty had been having a dream about his girlfriend, and Smitty had an erection. And in the middle of that first time, he rolled over with the first incoming and T-boned himself right into the concrete. He couldn't walk for 3 days. We kept on saying, Smitty, what you want? We'll put you in for a Purple Heart. No, don't you guys even think about that. I don't want that written up. But he wouldn't have anything to do with it. But that was one of the funny things. Poor guy, T-boned himself into that concrete, and it's what you do to protect yourself. Um, the third little story I'll share with you about how hard it is, how important it is to just pancake. When I left Vietnam and got reassigned, I'll share this a little later on, to the Presidio San Francisco. I checked in Presidio San Francisco for my last year in the service. Anyhow, I was 6:30 in the morning. I'm making up my bunk, and I had no idea in San Francisco they have this stupid cannon that they fire off at reveille. That so they're playing. They're raising the flag in the morning. They fire off this boom cannon. Guess who pancakes on the floor in the middle of the barracks in San Francisco? Me, because that's just what you do. And these guys are looking at me and they're just laughing there. And I flip them off. I said, "You have no idea, guys. You haven't been to Vietnam. This is how you stay alive." For a week, that damn cannon would go off. I'd still panic. You just do it. And finally, I said, I got to get away from this. I was able to get off an off base housing, because it was destroying my mind, that damn cannon every morning. So I digress. I'll get back to Vietnam. Um, the other thing that happened, as I mentioned at the very beginning, 2 letters have impacted my life. The first was from the President of the United States. Greetings. Greetings from the President of the United States. The second was I had been in Vietnam probably 30 days, and I get a letter from this young lady from California. Hi, my name's Karen. You don't know me, but I'm the daughter of a friend of your aunt. My aunt lived in California. Um, she sent me a letter. I sent her a letter. center. So we started writing to each other. So for a year we were pen pals. And I'll explain that how that blossomed a little later. But that's one of the other things that impacted my life in Vietnam. Um, we I was stationed in Ben Hoa for about 6 months. I was there when we the 101st went to the Aisha Valley and took Hamburger Hill. I think that was in May. I'd been there 3 months. General Westmoreland and the president needed a win. They took this stupid nondescript hill that was in the Aisha Valley that was near the Ho Chi Minh Trail where they're bringing supplies. They knew that there were MBA in there. And they said, 101st, you're going to clean that hill off, get them out of there. It took us 12 days. We lost 72 men and over 370 wounded in action. I think there were 6 or 7 missing in action. It was horrible. We were working, you only could work 24 hours, but we were just working, forget about overseas reassignment. We were typing wounded in action letters and missing in action letters and KIA letters to families and just, it was horrible. What was horrible, we took the hill. I have pictures of it. We took that nondescript hill and then gave it up 10 days later because it was meaningless. They realized it had no strategic value. And I think that Hamburger Hill experience is when it changed. There was a shift that happened during the war. We could feel it. We, instead of the U.S. Army and the Marines and taking the majority of the fight, we started making the ARVN, the Republic of Vietnam. Meant soldiers lead the battles. It changed the shift. I know it just caused a huge political shift. Um, Westmoreland got his win. The president got a win. Huge amount of lives, and they just quietly we abandoned the hill. It was didn't we had a base on it, but it meant the base meant nothing. Had no strategic. We to get supplies there, gasoline there, and to keep it manned. For what? It was just a hill that was in the middle of nowhere that had no value. So we abandoned it. Um, After about 3 months after that, then the 101st decided to move headquarters from Ben Hoa, right next to Long Binh there in Saigon, to Hue Phu Bai. Hue Phu Bai was way up north. It was 20 miles south of the DMZ. You could almost throw a rock and be in North Vietnam. So my last 6 months of that year, of my year in Vietnam, was spent in Hue Phu Bai. While I was in Ben Hoa, I would when you're an FNG and you're a new and when I felt I was indestructible. I'd volunteer for convoys when I was in Ben Hoa, and I'd go into Saigon, and I wanted to see what was going on. I just felt invincible. Once you once you get over the hump after 6 months and you realize I might get out of this alive, you stop taking chances. You stop taking risks. I mean, we still had to pull guard duty because I was in a headquarters camp. We guard the perimeter every third night, every 3 days. We had to pull guard duty, and you go out in the perimeter. Uh, when you did this in Ben Hoa, we did it in Hue Phu Bai, but the perimeter is all around the barbed wire fence all around the camp. and they'd give you night goggles. You'd go out there and you'd watch the NBA as they came in, and these sappers. And as soon as that first mortar went off, you'd triangulate where they were, and you'd call in the Cobra gunships. They were up within 60 seconds. They were always warmed up, and boom, they'd come in. And you'd have two of them, and they'd just come in with those Gatling guns on the coordinates that we called in, and you could see because the sappers knew, the NBA knew they had less than 60 seconds to get all three rounds off. That was the other thing I meant to mention. These rounds, as they came in, they're boom, boom, boom. They're fast. And the reason was because when you're on perimeter guard duty, we triangulate where they were, call in the choppers, call in the Cobras, and they would just come in and just turn them to hamburger, just grind them up. These Gatlings would just come in with the tracer rounds, and it just chew up that whole area, just chew it up. And you'd go out in the next morning to look to see if you could find something. It was never any, maybe a few scraps of the launcher, but that was about it. And that was guard duty. And that was every night. That was our life. Um, but when I was in Wei Fubai up north, Wei Fubai used to be the capital of all of Vietnam when it was just one country, and it's beautiful. It's just this French old architecture, just beautiful pagoda temples. It's just beautiful. You see in some of the movies they'd show some of the pictures of it, but it just a different feel. It's a different type of country, and just old and historical. When I was up at Wei Fubai, since we were so close to the Ho Chi Minh Trail, I just never left the base. Never volunteered to go out to go on convoys again. Never. I just stayed. Got short timer complex. Said maybe I'd get out of here. And I mean, I did all my duty that was there. We still got rocketed, and mortared every night. I was fortunate that I had just been one side of the sandbags instead of the other. I wouldn't be here today. Um, when you see your buddies get killed or wounded, some snaps you wanna go get retribution, vengeance, and it's not a good place to be because Vietnam, you can't tell there's no uniforms. You can't tell the NBA from the civilians. Just they weren't wearing uniforms. They were just wearing regular clothes, and your psyche wants to go kill, and you can't. You just got to be careful. I had a buddy that was a helicopter Cobra gunship pilot, and he had been. Their life is just as crucial. They know that after if they're in a firefight, after 60 seconds, their odds of getting shot down just explode exponentially if they're going to get shot down. So they've got to get in and get out of there quick before before they get sighted on. And when I looked him up after I got back from Vietnam, and he just wanted some of the expletives he talked about Vietnamese. It was just horrible. He had just been turned into a killing machine. I saw that happen. It started to happen to me. It started to happen to a lot of people. They'd have all these different nasty names they would call. Just you lose respect for life. It's a sad place to be. Anyhow, it's what war does to you. You're in a survival mode. Um, Wei Fubai, I did before I got to Wei Fubai. I had a cousin that was in Da Nang, and this was when I was still in Benoit, and I took a convoy from Benoit to Da Nang. It was just about 90 mile through the mountains and over the mountains to get to the Da Nang right on the coast. And he was in the Navy. Took a convoy, got a 3 day. Didn't get you. There's no passes. I just did it to see my cousin in. spent a day with him. It's interesting when the convoy, you go through a little small Vietnamese village, and it's packed, it's crowded, there's people on the street, there's people walking carrying their little loads of rice, and it's just crowded. But you'd think the convoy, the trucks would slow down. They do just the opposite. When you come to the village, they floor it. He just bodies. I mean, they don't care. They're not going to slow down. They're going to stop because they used to do that. And as soon as they slowed down just a little bit, or to let the traffic go through, or to let the people get out of the way, grenades get thrown into the convoy. So they learned, you don't slow down. You just preservation. You roll through it. You see people get run over on their bikes. It just was war. Um, I mean, it was an eye opener for me watching what happened on those convoys. Um, to get a break, I was able to get two R&Rs. My first R&R, I'd been there in country about 6 months, and I got to go to Taipei, Taiwan, and I didn't enjoy it. I just I couldn't relax. I did not enjoy it at all. My second, so somehow I was able to convince my warrant officer that I was due a second one, and so about 4 months later, I went to Sydney, Australia, and it's such a dichotomy. You're in a war zone, fighting for your life, getting rocketed and mortared. Plane takes off. You land in Sydney. It's, life is normal. Life at the beach. Life in the nightclubs. It's just I don't even know. It just messes with your mind that there's this war going on and you're in a life death situation. Then as soon as you leave, you go out of country. You call it going back to the real world. It's an R&R. It helps. So I was in Sydney, and they tell you that this plane's packed. Every seat. Don't miss your flight back to Vietnam. Somehow I overslept and missed my flight, and I panicked. I get up at 8 o'clock and think, oh no, my flight was supposed to leave at 7, and I overslept. And anyhow, I go back make it to the airport, and fortunately, one of the guys that was there, I had assigned him there. I had assigned his duty to Sydney, and he said, "Ruybal, don't worry about it. Got you taken care of." Got me on the next flight. Nothing. I wasn't AWOL or anything. It was again the buddy system. You do a good deed, it came back. That good deed came back to help me out from getting back from Sydney into the war zone. And what else? Oh, so I was supposed to at the end of my year there for 365 days in Vietnam. You have a calendar that you fill out every day, and you just when you start at the beginning, you just fill in this little day. There's 365 days. And there you think it's never going to happen. Finally, when you get down to the last 10 days, you just think maybe I'm going to get out of this alive. Just anytime the mortars would come in, you pancake first. You're just making sure you fill in the sandbags. You're just maybe going to get out of this alive. I was supposed to go to Germany for my last year. I wanted to go to Germany. I said, if I survive this crazy war, I'm going to Germany. I'm going to buy a Porsche. I'm going to come back and I'm going to be the big man on campus. I'm going to have a Porsche. But because remember I told you earlier, I received a letter from a young 18-year-old. As we wrote to each other, we became great pen pals. She sent me a picture of herself. She said, "This is a special lady." So I changed my orders. I found an opening in the Presidio of San Francisco. Then the dude that was supposed to go Uh, I was supposed to go to, he went to Germany and I took his place and went to the Presidio San Francisco. And same MOS, same everything. My warrant officer approved it because I wanted to be in California. Karen lived, the lady's name was Karen. Uh, we dated. She drove all the way when I was on leave, came back from Vietnam. She drove out from San Jose in her little VW, introduced herself in person. We met in this little motel on the east side of Denver. She was just amazing. Um, I said, this is the best thing. So I went back to Presidio. We dated for a year. I told you about that stupid cannon going off. But we dated for a year. Every night after I'd get off duty, I'd drive down to San Jose and we'd do something. I really met, she was in college. She was a sophomore and I messed up her school because I was distracting her from studies. But I said, this is a special woman. So proposed and we got married on January 2nd, 1971. Got married in the hills of Santa Cruz, um, honeymooned in Monterey, California. That was on a Sunday. Monday, I reported back into Presidio and mustered out of the service. Left on January 4th, 1971. I got an early out. Instead of being out in March, I got out a couple of months early so I could go back to University of Colorado and start that final senior semester, get my degree. So we drove from we drove from San Francisco to Boulder, and I went back to school. My last year in at the Presidio of San Francisco, my last year in the service, one of the hardest parts was the highlight was being able to date Karen. We've been married now 51 years. I'd go through all this crap again to meet a woman like her, to go through to meet her again. It was worth it. That's the best part. My service in Vietnam. When I was in the Presidio, Presidio is, as you know, has this cemetery on the hill, and we would bury two or three, soldiers there every day. We'd pull burial detail. I'd always volunteer to pull it, and either carry the casket or fold the flag. And it was an honor for me to do that service. But we had three bugle players that could play the taps. They alternated, and we had one guy. This guy would play the taps with such emotion. There's notes, and then there's notes, and he would play the taps, and there would not be a dry eye, even with us. I performed that duty countless times. When he played, it was so touching. But that was a little bit the least I could do to honor someone that had given their life to serve the United States. Ah, sorry, sorry, sorry. I volunteered as many times as I could. I had a great warrant officer while I was there in Presidio, and he we got along great. I have to tell you one more story. I just remember talking about warrant officers. Talking about changes too. When I was stationed at Fort Campbell, we had a warrant officer, Griffin, that was our warrant officer. He was in charge of our unit, and he invited myself and Tyrone over to dinner at his home. come on to dinner. So we went to his home, walked to the door, knock, knock. Hey, come on in. Tyrone, you go around the back. You have to go around the back door. It was the South, and that's the way he had been brought up. And it was just a real eye opener for me. I said, Tyrone, if you're going in the back door, I'm going in the back door with you. So we both did. We came around the back door. I still, here's a great guy, great warrant officer, but it's just there was still this old South prejudice. You're black, you go in the back door. In the Army, that I thought that had been obliterated, but especially in Vietnam. In Vietnam, we were all together. Uh, there were there were some LTs and new guys that came in. They're full of fire and brimstone, and like I said, that sergeant major is going to have reveille. They'd come in and they'd want to change this and change that. They learned real quickly. You either adapt and you be at one with everybody, or you get your ass fragged. We had one LT that was just a hard ass. I'm, I'm thinking, come on, you got to get your head together, LT. Next thing I knew, that next morning he got fragged when he was in the outhouse, and he got medevaced out. They didn't kill him, but he scared the hell out of him and hurt him a little bit. You just learned we're all in this together. Or that there's you don't if they're smoking and joking, if they're smoking marijuana in the hooch. You're a commander. You don't come in. You don't come into that hooch. You just leave things alone. Respect. I uh, I had I had two when I first got there. We had a guy by the name of Payne that was in charge. He was the admin platoon leader, and he was pretty much a hard ass. But he taught me a lot of things because then Sergeant Mahala took over after Payne, and then I took over after Sergeant Mahala. Sergeant Mahala became an E6, and he wanted me to be an E6 too. I was just an E5. I didn't want to be a staff sergeant because the staff sergeants had to go live with the lifers. Our hooch was just all draftees enlisted. We were all, these were the guys I was working with. I said, no, thank you, Denny. I know you're okay with it, but not for me. I'll stay in this hooch with my buddies, and I need to be over there with the sergeant majors and the staff sergeants and all that. Those are lifers. I'm just a draftee like the rest of these, even though I've got the extra year. I learned a lot in the service. I learned how to make my bunk. I learned how to respect everybody. I mean, I was thrown in with people from all across the U.S., uh, different races, different backgrounds, different economic, different education. I mean, so many guys that were just high school graduates. Uh, it was it was true melting pot. We all had to depend on each other. I remember when I was in Vietnam, Tiny Bullman was one of my typists that I was on his ass all the time because he was lazy. And I said, Tiny, we've got to get this work done, though we were on deadlines. And I was just riding his ass all the time. One night, one night he got drunk and jumped on top of me in my bunk and had a knife to my throat. Rival, just I'm gonna kill you. The guys pulled him off, and I said, "Oh, is my life worth riding Tiny Boltman's life just to make him a little bit better?" I never said another word to him. I'm kidding. Whatever pace he was going to be on, was fine with me. Uh, those are the accommodations you learn to live with in the service. You learn respect for each other, but you learn how to accommodate each other. as I said, I make my bunk every day still. I use some of the terminology FNG when I start a new job. Hey, I'm the FNG here. They'd all look, what does that mean? Well, I'd explain it to them. They'd laugh and then, okay, yeah, you are the new guy here. So, but that will always go with me. And as I said, the military taught me a tremendous amount. It made me a better man. But more than anything, it was the my time of service. I would have never met this beautiful lady, Karen, had I not been in Vietnam. So it all worked out. It all worked out for the better. We have a family of three daughters. We've been married 51 years. I would do it all over again to, if that's the path I needed to take to meet her. Um, the service has been an amazing part of my life. I have to tell you one more story. So when I was at the Presidio, I do have PTSD, and I'll tell you what it's about. There are two types of PTSD. The number one is when I'm in that holding camp, when I, and when I'm in Vietnam and I have nobody there. I was there landing in Vietnam and then leaving Vietnam. You're in that holding company. And you lose all your relationships because you're there with just people going home. When I was in the one that I landed in and got my bag broken into and locked my camera, I still have PTSD about that. I said, "How could you do this to me?" When I left the holding company, it was we were all just glad to get out of there, out of Vietnam. I still remember when the jet took off. We left out of Cam Ranh Bay. As soon as that jet, we were getting mortared at the time, and as soon as the jet cleared, the mortars popping up, we all let out a loud cheer. We're out of here. I landed in Seattle, Washington, and then, as I said, went back to the Presidio. When I was at the Presidio, I'd been there 2 days. So it was on the first Saturday. I think I got there on a Thursday, Saturday, Friday. Saturday morning, I said, "There's a right outside the Presidio on Lombard Street. There's a bakery. I'm going to walk out to the bakery and get some donuts or something." I made the mistake of wearing my uniform off base. I was probably half a block. I know it's just walking into half a block away from the bakery. And these a group of guys came up and just started flipping me off and calling me obscene names and baby killer and all kinds of crap that I don't even want to say. Spitting on me and getting in my face. I had to turn around and go take my uniform off. I couldn't leave base with my uniform. That was to me as just was PTSD to this day about that crap. My dad asked me, "You want to join the BFW?" When I got home, I said, "No, Dad. This is a different time." My dad had served in World War II, and he was a medic, and he was proud. But we couldn't. When I came home from Vietnam, um, we couldn't wear a uniform on base. You were even told you don't wear a uniform on the plane; they'll harass you. I just didn't think about it till I was in San Francisco when that happened. The whole time last year, I could never wear my uniform off base. Could never say you were in the service because they would just deride you. It was just horrible. Anyhow, it's changed. It's done a 180. I'm glad we give up our seats. We give the best seats to the military. We applaud them. They can wear their uniforms proudly now. I'm glad it's done a 180. But that's where I have not about the war, not about mortars. It's those two where I was betrayed by my own guys that took my camera and by getting spit on by our own people. It's just that's just I guess those are the two things that I have PTSD about. Stressed. Um, I've rambled a little bit. Um, Matthew, what I'm trying to think. The services has been the best thing that's ever happened to me. I would like every, I wish it was like in Israel and in Switzerland where every person had to serve for a year. You learn so much from the respect for the military. I don't want anyone to be in a war. I hate war. War is political and I hate it. But service to your country, I believe everybody should serve their country and learn respect and the chain of command. Um, there's so much to learn, so much to know. It then molds your character. The service, the Army was a great experience. I'm glad I survived it. I'm glad you're doing this. As I said, Vietnam was we got no welcome. Um, Afghanistan, all the different fighters now, we welcome them back. We learned, we've learned from Vietnam, I hope, not to engage with our, use our weaponry, not our humanity for these wars. I, I just went to Vietnam. My wife has been after me to, she knows all about a little bit of the history. As I mentioned to you, Sergeant Mahala came by from Detroit. I'd been married about 13 years. He looked me up, came by from Detroit and stopped in Denver at the time where we were living, and we talked for hours, just relating old stories and recapping stories that I'd never shared with my wife and I had forgotten and buried in my brain. Didn't want to talk about them, but then he brought them out and we talked. It was good. It was not lethargic, whatever. It was it was good to talk about things. Karen always wanted me to go back to Vietnam. I did not want to go. I just no, there's too many cobwebs there. I don't too many too many thoughts I don't want to bring up again. But she finally convinced me, and in 2018 we went to Vietnam. We visited Saigon, which is now called Ho Chi Minh City. We went with a tour group, gave one tours, and visited Saigon. Is just Ho Chi Minh City is beautiful, just thriving. It's a metropolitan city. It's went to Long Binh and Bien Hoa. Bien Hoa is a retirement community now for Americans. Golf course. It's just beautiful. More Americans retire and are retiring in Vietnam because it's safe and it's inexpensive and it's beautiful and they welcome us back. We didn't kill the country. It's doing great. It survived all our bombs, our napalm, all our. I mean, I had been in Vietnam. I remember telling my mother I'd been there maybe 30 days. I said, Mom, we're never going to win this war. They don't care. They just want to grow their rice. This is an agrarian society. It doesn't matter whether it's democracy or communist. It doesn't impact the rice. As long as they can grow their rice and they have they have their water buffalo, they're happy. They're never going to kick out communism. Communism today in Vietnam, it's communism, but it's quasi capitalism. They, after 10 years, I think our guide explained it to me. 10 years after we pulled out of Vietnam, Vietnam stopped losing the aid of Russia and China. So then they went into this period for about 30 years they had to resolve things. And now they've come up with this quasi communism, capitalism that works. When it was all communism, 100%, let's just say they gave you 10 chickens to raise. They gave you as a family. I want you to raise these 10 chickens. You raise them, you get to keep, they're producing 10 eggs a day, you keep one egg, you give 9 back to the government. You go to slaughter the chickens, we're going to give you the feet, the wingtips, and the necks. All the good meat goes back to the government. And that's the way, the same way with the rice. The rice, you get to keep a little tiny bit of it, the rest goes to the government. And it wasn't working. The economy was just floundering. Now they have this quasi capitalism where you can own, you can keep, you can raise. They encouraged companies to come in. There's Japanese countries all over their Canon. There's American companies all over the countryside doing manufacturing. A lot of our things are manufactured in Vietnam, and so it's working now. You can have your own business. You can have business down below, build your home up above, and you can have your own. You own that home. You don't. The government doesn't own it anymore. So it's thriving over there. We when we went to Hanoi, we got to see the mausoleum where Ho Chi Minh was buried. Ho Chi Minh always wanted to be buried in Saigon. Never they after he died, they never did that. They buried him in this beautiful mausoleum, and it's very similar to our Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers, that they have a 24-hour guard. They change the guards every hour. Very respectful. That's where he's buried. Um, and then they renamed, because he's in Hanoi, buried there, they renamed Saigon Ho Chi Minh City in honor of his last wish. Ho Chi Minh, I've just come to find out, really was all he wanted was independence. That's all he wanted was independence for his country. And he was this close to the US government having it off the record, getting that achieved before the war started. When you go back through history now and find out all that, and you can learn all that. We learned more about that while we were in Vietnam. It was good for me, very therapeutic for me to go back to Vietnam and see that it's thriving, that we didn't destroy the country, that because they're just beautiful people and they love Americans. I would go back. I wouldn't live there, but I would go back again because it's just I felt at peace, and I just was so thankful again that the country has, it's not third world, it's just a thriving economy. We didn't destroy that country. And it made me feel glad Karen made me, encouraged me. I have to share one last thing. So the secret to a long lasting uh, marriage, listen to your spouse. And that's what I finally did with Vietnam. She kept on telling me, Bob, let's go to Vietnam. You need it. I finally listened to her, and I'm glad I did. Uh, it, it helped me. It helped me get through a lot of things. And as I said, I've rambled. That's my story. 2 letters changed my life. The service has changed my life for the better. U.S. Army, I have the total respect for the Army. Uh, there are good people in the Army and there are bad people, just like in anything. And you learn how to weed through that. You learn how to survive through it. And that's taught me. It taught me a lot. And as I said, I'm a better man for being in the service than I would have been just on my own. That's my story. That's my background. You asked for my experience, and that's my experience. And I hope my words will allow others to come out and talk about their experience. You have to, as I said, thank you for allowing me to talk about it. It's been a long time. And I appreciate the opportunity. And for what it's worth, if it goes into the archive, and that's what happened. That's that's my experience in the U.S. Army. Thank you.